So good morning, guys. Morning again. So as Francine stated, we would be discussing GP systems administrator and how they manage their day-to-day jobs, more so what they do on the system maintenance side. So I hope that there will be some key areas that you can take away and apply to your environment. So when we hear Dynasty versus SA, there are two primary differences when we are thinking about these users. All it means that with an SA user, this is a SQL database administrator user, which has full access to all the databases, whether it's your SQL databases or non-GP databases. So it has a holistic, full access over all databases within SQL. Now, when we think about Dynasty, this user has only access to your GP database administrator and only has access to your GP databases only. All right. The first topic that we're going to jump into would be GP security. So when we are thinking about GP security, we want to know how best we can help increase security in our GP environment. So there are several types of security within Dynamics. We have system security, we have company security, we have individual security, all right? We have setting up of security tasks and security roles. So we're gonna jump into a little bit more in depth in those security features. Now, the first security feature that I mentioned is system security. So this would control how you access your system information, such as if you have to set up a new user, if you have to assign security or printing of reports to a particular user. You may want to control the level of security with passwords, and only a few persons should know what password is used to create the system password within GP. So in order to create this, you would usually go to your administration panel, and then you would go to your system password under setup. All right, you would create the new password. And what this does, when you create the password here, any person that is accessing the administration console is not going to be able to change any administrative task without entering the correct password upon entry, right? So if I give it a password here, all right, it's going to allow you to enter system password to be able to access any of the functionality. Right? The nice thing about GP 18.2, which is the latest version, the 2019, in prior versions, you would have to enter the password multiple times every time you come out of a window. However, with the latest version of GP, they have now changed that, whereas you enter the password once for every session. So once you're within the session, you enter the password, you could have full range once you have not logged out, right? If you log out and log back in, then you would have to enter the password to access the administration features. All right, now we're gonna look at your company security. Now, just a little bit about that. That controls access to your companies on a per user basis. So if you set up a user record, that person doesn't have access to any company, right? So what you do, you will grant access using the user access window. And what this means is that once the user is created within the user setup area, You would then come to user access. You will click on a particular user and you will grant that user access. Right? So granting these company rights would allow you to have control of what companies the users have access to that you have created. So a user could have access to, out of these 3 companies, they could have access to, or they could have access to 1, or they could have access to all 3. It's all dependent on the companies that the users need to have access to at that point in time. The administrator could go in and schedule that access accordingly. The third security feature we're going to look at would be setting up of a security task, right? The task that we're going to set up would be assigned to security roles, and we're going to grant access to Windows reports, right? You could also grant access to Microsoft Dynamics GP resources for a user to complete a specific task. So let's go into the security task under Setup System Security Task. And here we're going to create a task for the work that's going to be undertaken. So in order to create a security task, we're going to assign a task ID. Right? And to save time, you could either copy an existing security task, or you have the option to create your own security task. In order to copy an existing security task, we click copy. We look for the task ID, right? So you have a whole range of task IDs here. So we could select any one of these task IDs. Inventory, project financials, right? General ledger reports, that's the one we're selecting. And we click OK. What this is going to do is going to pull in the category associated with the task that you copy, as well as the description for that task. Now, you would select the product associated with this task from the product list. If you have any third parties, you would look for the third-party product and select it. But because we are using a Microsoft Dynamics GP task, that's the one that we're going with. Then we select the type, right? And we want the Windows type because that's what we want the user to have access to. And the series would be our financial series. So if I click on the access list, display selected items, right, it's going to show the items associated with this task, right? So you have a holistic view if you need to add additional items to this task list, or should I say additional windows. And if you select to narrow it down, it shows a minimized version of only the selected tasks. If you were to save this, right? And we can go back and look for our task that we have created, which is test default user. And we're able to pull that back in. All right, I'm going to clear this. And I'm going to create another task called test task. And I'm going to create another copy from task ID. Right, let's look at set up general ledger, and let's click OK. Our type again would be Windows, and our series would be financial. Right, and again, by clicking the box, you can see what windows the user have access to. You can even double click on the specific window or task list, and it's gonna give you a pop-up of the window that the user has access to. So that's a nice feature. So you have an idea of what the user is accessing. All right. So we're gonna save this test task. And now we're gonna create a security role. Now with the security role, it will contain the security tasks, which we have just created. And some default security roles would have already been created for you, just like they are default security tasks. They are also default security roles. So once I click on security roles, and these are the positions that you have in your organization, right? You can view them here. The ones with the asterisks are built-in security roles from GP. It's recommended that you never modify a GP security role. If you do have to create one based on an existing role, I rather you do that than modifying the one that comes with GP. Because once you change that, you can't reboot. So if you need the bookkeeper role, you can either assign the bookkeeper role, or if it is you want to add additional task inside that bookkeeper role, then I rather you create a new one, assign the bookkeeper role, and then add those extra tasks within there. So we are going to create this role called test role, and we're going to copy a particular role. So the role that we're going to use would be accounting manager. I'm going to select OK. Now I'm going to click on the display selected task, right? And you could also click on the financial module, and it's going to show the security task that you have access to. All right, so let's go back to all. The role that I want to assign, or should I say the task that I want to assign to my role would be the task which was created. So let's look for that task ID. So it's called test task. And that's what I'm going to also assign to this test role. So apart from all these other functionality that I can do, I can also bring in any additional task or tasks that I may want this role to be a part of for a particular user. You can bring in as many tasks as you want into a particular role and then assign it to that particular user. So now that I've created my role and I've assigned my tasks, I'm going to save this test role. All right, the same way that you could double click in your task, you could also double click in your role, and it's going to carry you to the window for you to view what role is assigned to that particular user. Now, with regards to individual users, you have the ability to set up individual user security, which is based in Dynamics GP. So each of your users would be assigned to a security role before they can access any forms or data within Microsoft Dynamics GP. So you would go to administration, and then you would go to your user security. You would choose a user. You would choose a company. You can check to see if there are any roles associated with that user. If not, you can assign the roles that you have listed here. One of the roles that we have is test role, which we created. So you could assign to that user the test role, and then you could assign a report ID. This allows you to assign modified reports to a particular ID that's assigned to a particular user. Right? So you can go to your products and you could select if it's a Microsoft Dynamics GP report or form, if it's based on a report or based on a window. It's going to bring up all the series, or you can filter based on a particular series. And then you can drill down any particular report and you can state whether you wanted to use the original report or you wanted to use a report that was originally modified based on a specification requirement. Right? So we have just set up a task. We have assigned the task to a role, and then we also assigned a default ID so that we can set up, modify forms or reports to a particular user. All right. What we're also going to look at now is where we can do a particular backing up of your databases based on any maintenance that needs to occur within the system. Now, there may be instances where you need to perform a checklinks or a reconcile, and you want to ensure that you make a backup in case anything goes wrong. Right? You also have the option to take the company offline before you do the backups. Before you do the maintenance. So you have the two options. You will do the backup, which is a recommended practice, to have the databases backed up every evening. It's also important to perform backups during the day if you're doing year-end closeout or running any sort of maintenance routines, as I mentioned earlier, checklinks or reconcile. Then once you perform your backup, you can take a company offline in the event that users may attempt to enter the system while performing these maintenance procedures. So to perform a backup, there are many different ways in which you can do it. You can do it straight out of GP, where you go Microsoft Dynamics GP, maintenance, and then backup. Or you can do it directly out of SQL, where you go to SQL Server Manager and you create your backups from here. Now, from what I am going to show you, I'm going to show you how to create an automatic backup for when you're doing your backups of your company or system databases. So you don't have to go and do it manually. Now, this one may be a little different than how you may usually do it. I'm going to do it where I'm going to create a job to perform the backups for me. So the first thing I'm going to do, or what you would do in this instance, you would go to your live database and you would perform a backup of your company. So I would go to my test company and I go to backup. I'm going to only choose the copy only backup option, and that's to ensure that it doesn't interfere with any maintenance backups that's currently being run. And I'm also going to generate a script, all right, to action the query below. I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to execute the script. All right, the backup was successful. The next thing I'm going to do, and what you would do, you would usually go to your test database. And in my case, I don't have a test or live database. I have one database that I'm working from. So you would go to your other database and you would create a restore script. And that restore script is going to restore the backup that you just did. So we're going to right click on the database. We're going to go task. We're going to go restore. We're going to go database. We're going to go to options, and the restore option is going to override the existing database. And we want to also close out any existing connections that may be using that database. I'm going to go to script, and I'm going to script out my restore. Now, thirdly, what we're going to do is create a job. To create a job, you right click on jobs, you go to new job, and here you build out your schedule. So the first thing that you're going to do is give your job a name. So you can say backup from live test, right? So for persons who always need to have their test company updated with current information, so that they can be able to go in there and do any checks and balances that they won't want to perform on the live, you can also always create an automatic schedule that will update this from time to time. So we are going to take our first, so this is the name of our job. I'm going to click OK. Let's go back in, and we're going to create our first step. Now our first step, we're going to back up the live database. We're going to go to our script, which is our backup script. We're going to copy that. Paste our script, and then we're going to click OK. Our second step would be to restore that backup to test. So the script that we used for our restore, we're going to copy that. We're going to paste the script, and then we're going to select OK. Now what we're going to do now is that we're going to create a third step. So after we back that up and we restore it to our test database, we now need to do an InterCompany ID script. Now this is going to go in and check to see if there are any duplicates, because what tends to happen, when you copy from a live test, it's going to bring across those IDs onto your test database, which is not going to allow you to enter because it's going to be duplicated within the system. So running the change intercompany ID is going to change out that information. So it's going to have a unique identifier. So we're going to call this change intercompany ID. All right. Microsoft has this script available on their site for anybody who needs to access it. All right, and this script is going to be run against our test database. All right. I'm also going to change the DB owner, and I'm going to have my test database to have a DB owner of DynSA. So remember I spoke earlier about the difference between SA and DynSA. SA users have access to all SQL databases, whether it's GP or non-GP databases, and DynSA only have access to GP databases. So let's call this change DB owner. And we're going to use script to do that. And this is going to be run as well against our test database. So once this is done, you can now go in and currently we have on success, it will go to the next step. You can specify what the next step is. In this case, it would be step 2. And then this step 2 would go to step 3. And then step 3 would go to step 4. And our last step would quit the job reporting success, right? That's our last option. All right. So now that we have our job set up, let's click OK. Actually, before we click OK, we're going to set a schedule, right? Because that's the purpose of why we're creating this job, because we want it to be run at a particular time. So here you can create your schedule of when you want your job to automatically run. So back up your database from live, restore it to test. You could have it whether it's done as a nightly restore or during the day when you know that users are not currently using the test company, you can have that restored onto your test database. You also have the option to do a manual restore of the job in the event that at the spur of the moment you need the information to be backed up and restored onto your next company system. You can do that, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So let's create a schedule, and we could have this as nightly. We could have it as reoccurring. All right, we could have it to run daily, and then you could set whether you want it to run every hour or 2 hours or at a particular time, 12 in the morning. And a duration, you could choose, if you choose to have it start at a particular date. If you not today, then you can choose another date of the week for it to start. You can set an end date, or in my case, no end date. and then you select OK. All right. So once that is done, you have your backup that you have created. And if you need to run it manually, you right click on the job and you start job at step, and then you click start, and that's going to start the job and go through the steps. And if it fails, then you'd have to go in and do some troubleshooting. If it's successful, you're going to be notified that the status is success. All right. So my job has finished. It was back up from live and it was executed onto test without any issues. Now, I want to go back to GP. And now that we back up our database, we have the ability to now take the company offline. So with take the company offline, you could either use a default message or you could use a custom message. All right. And you could current users, you could check to see what current users currently in the system. All right. And you could see what company is currently offline. I'm going to insert this company so it will be under the offline. And I'm going to click OK. All right. So you're prompted that the users are logged into the companies that are taken offline. Do you want to send the users a message? And you click yes. So it's going to show you who you want the messages to send to, as well as if you want to send it as a notification or a task with a reminder. And you can click send. All right. So as you can see that it came up with a task with a reminder. So users are notified that they need to be off at a particular time for you to do your maintenance. So once the users have logged out, you are now able to take your company offline, right? And if I was to, right, so we also got the message prompt as well because we chose the both options. And if I was to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, user and company, you can see that the company is now offline. System administrators are able to log back into this company, but an end user would not be. So once you are completed with your maintenance duties, you can go back in the offline company. You are prompted that the company is currently offline for maintenance. Do you want to continue to log in? So only the SA user or users with the SA password can log back into an offline company. I'm going to say yes. And you have the ability to now go back in and put the company back online. All right, so the company is back online. All right, so some reasons, like as I mentioned, that you would take a company offline is one, checklinks. Checklinks is what we consider as a maintenance routine. It is available in Dynamics GP and you could run it across different modules to correct problems which may occur with your data. So what this means is that with the check links, it causes data in related database tables to be examined against each other for consistency. So keep in mind that check links can take a significant amount of time depending on your data size, depending on your processing power. So please be prepared that if it is you are running a check links, once you start the process, please allow it time to finish. For persons who would require to run the checklinks, if you're a system administrator within your company, you would go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, then you would go to maintenance, and then you would go to checklinks. Right here, you can select the particular series or module that you need to run the checklinks against, and then the tables that may be causing the issue that you need to now correct that problem that currently have inconsistencies within your data. Another reason that we mentioned earlier is the reconcile, and the reconcile compares your data in corresponding tables, and it will make adjustments as it needs. So for example, if you have, say, a value on a summary trial balance that doesn't match the corresponding total on a detailed trial balance, the reconcile will go in and recalculate those values of the summary trial balance based on the detailed records in that table. So what you may see happening is that you may have a financial reconcile going on. It may correct the account totals. You may also need to do reconcile if you change your fiscal periods, right? So the system would then go in and go through and check all the accounts balances against the transactions that were posted. If you decide to do inventory reconcile, that's also another one that you may need to do frequently. That would reconcile and check your item quantities. It would go in and allocate quantities, go in and check your allocated quantities as well, your quantities that are on hand, and make any corrections that are needed. All right, so those two maintenance features are also important for a system administrator when they are doing their maintenance duties. Another interesting task that you can, or security feature for maintenance procedure, may be providing a user with access to only a particular screen, or providing a user with only particular fields in a particular screen. So for example, in inventory, let's say item, you do have the ability to look at this window and say a user does not need access to the current cost or the list price. In this window here, the list price is currently grayed out, and that's so the user is not able to go in and make any modifications to this field, and you are able to achieve that functionality by using the field security in setup. So you would go to administration setup, and let's see. All right, I'm not currently seeing my All right, so I'm not currently seeing my option, so I would need to go back in and check that. But there's a field security option that you can go in that can assist you in locking down a particular area within a window. All right, you can either set passwords to that window, or you can remove access to a particular field, where you can hide a particular field or just make it grayed out as you saw just now. Right, another system administrator duty would be updating statistics. Now, when we talk about updating statistics, it's something that you should do on your databases whenever you have a significant increase or decrease in your data, such as period consolidation is performed when you're doing updating of statistics. To perform the update of statistics, you need to go to your maintenance window in GP, and here you can go to SQL, and it allows you to update statistics. So once you choose the database, and then you choose the product, and you choose the company, you can select the information under that company, and you can select update statistics and then click process. That is going to now go in and recompile everything within that particular database. The other feature would be recompiling of stored procedures, and this is another SQL maintenance function where if there's a significant increase or decrease in data as well, it's also good to recompile your stored procedures, which can result in better performance in the way things run and how fast things are queried. All right. Now, SQL Server can recompile your stored procedures automatically, but if you make a change to your database that affect the statistics, your stored procedures are not, your stored procedures, sorry, may lose efficiency, and recompiling those stored procedures on that table can optimize those queries, right? So there may be some indexes that you want to update. You can do it on a monthly basis on each database that you have, and that would increase your performance significantly. So to recompile, it's on the same window. You can go to the recompile feature. You can select the particular database again, and then you click on the process menu option. All right, so we took a look at adding a user to a particular role and adding a specific task to that role, and also assigning permissions to that particular user. We also looked at doing a backup and restore of that database and putting it on a scheduled job so that it can automatically update your company database on a schedule, and then going in and performing maintenance procedures by taking a company offline, where you can now go and perform your reconciler checklists or whatever system activities, whether you need to update your statistics or do a recompile of your stored procedures, right? And all of these tasks are performed by your system administrator. And they would need the assistance of you guys to assist them when they need to perform these tasks, because once they need to perform these tasks, you guys would need to be out, and they will be able to do their job on a day-to-day basis more efficiently. All right, let's see if I missed anything. Another feature that users would be able to, the system administrator, sorry, would be able to use to see if users are currently logged into the system would be the user activity, and they can remove users from here. Although I don't recommend just deleting a user, have them come out of the system before you update anything within GP, because they may be running a transaction and bumping them out can cause end user errors, and we don't want that. All right. For system administrators, there's one thing that you could note is that if for any reason you may forget your system password, there is a way in SQL that you can go in and update the dynamics table, which allows you to reset that password in GP. So for those of you who are interested in getting that query command, I can send that to you guys. All right, because if it is you do have a password set and you have forgotten it, you won't be able to access the administration module and you won't be able to perform any tasks. All right, so that in a nutshell is the various features outlined for a system administrator that we are covering here today in terms of maintenance. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to give me a message in the Q&A chat. I think I saw two. Yeah, I still don't. I'm just double checking based on what I'm seeing here, just to see if I'm still seeing the field level security, but no. So I'd have to go in and double check as to why it's not being displayed here. All right, so this is another way to access, or also from the administration and setup, but I don't see it. All right, but that is a cool feature if you need to lock down specific windows in GP. All right, I would give a bit more time for any further questions. All right, for those of you who may have questions, if any, after the end of this session, you can always email us at operations@optimus.group. All right, and we would be able to respond to your questions accordingly. All right, so I don't see any other questions coming in. Yeah, so that's it. The registration for my field security was not enabled at that time. So once you enable, let me just log out. Okay. All right, so this window here with regards to field level security is what's going to allow you to go in and provide any restrictions to a particular window. You can add a security ID. Let me see if I have anything here. You can select a product name. So you can go in you have the list of third parties or GP modules that you can select from. All right. So whether you want to go into advanced security, HITB, or regular GP, you are able to select a particular module. Let's go into GP and let's go into inventory. And here you are going to see the list of screens, right? You have all these screens that are available to you. The item maintenance window, we can look at item account maintenance, item maintenance options. Let's see what else we have here. Price level, price groups, right? So you have a range of options that you can choose from. So with regards to the main item maintenance window, if you decide to select that, in that window is going to show you the list of fields, right? These are the list of fields available within the item maintenance window. Look at buttons. Right? So you have, once you know what these options relate to within GP, you are able to restrict each option on the specific window in question. All right, so I could select just the name and select, and then I could select a security mode, or whether I want a password before I enter the maintenance window. Do I want to disable the window entirely? Do I want to lock a particular field? Do I want a warning before? Right, so you have various options. If we decide to set a password before or a password after, or lock a particular field, because you would have to go in and select what field you want associated with the item maintenance window, and then you could select the security mode associated. Once you have that selected, you click save, and you could validate whether or not the security feature was applied. Right? It has a little bit of analysis when you're using this window, because you have to go in and make sure that the field in association with whatever module and whatever window that you're selecting, that you're choosing the correct field. So you need to go in and play around with the options that you're available, but you can do a lot inside of here depending on how granular you want to go with your restrictions. All right, so this is a nice feature for any system admin that needs to um, cut down on the number of users that may be accessing or have permissions. You can go on a granular level and ensure that their users are only accessing what they need to access, right? And that way, limit the end user errors that can occur on a day-to-day basis. Right? So that wraps up this system admin maintenance webinar. Please feel free to reach out to us again at operations@optimus.guru. And I do thank you guys for the rest of your time. And thanks again, Joshua. Take care, guys.